because I wasn't buying. I tried to point out that this was a bubble. So I had a very good a record of predicting, and my firm has grown from, you know, maybe back in 2000, maybe I had $20 or $30 million, and now I've got a couple of billion. The number of accounts, I probably had a couple of hundred clients. I got like 15,000. So most of Wall Street has shrunk. I mean, you know, the 2000 was the peak of most of these retail firms. All the profits they've made now has all been gambling money. It's all been, you know, what they've got off of leverage and trading and stuff like that. But I built my firm because I've been correct on my market calls. But the reason I was able to understand what was going to happen in the commodities markets, in the currency markets, and international stock markets is because I understand how government policy affects economies, how central banks affect exchange rates. And I saw the countries that were doing it better than we were and invested there. And I understood how the monetary policy was going to affect prices of things like gold and oil. And that's why I bought all that stuff. But now, I mean, instead of just trying to figure out how to make money off what the government's doing, I want to stop it. Because it's getting out of control. You know, and some of my clients are actually, well, why do you want to, you know, they think that if I go there, I'm going to screw up their accounts. Because, you know, maybe gold won't go to 5,000, or maybe, you know. But, you know, it wouldn't be so bad if I could stop that. Because it's not going to be fun to have to endure that. And I don't even know, it might even be too late. But maybe if I get there and I get into the Senate, and I do what I'm doing now, I stand up there in the Senate and talk until I can't talk anymore. And filibuster everything that tries to come through that House. Try to make sure that no legislation goes through the Senate. The only stuff I want to go through is repealing the stuff that's already there. And maybe I can stop them from raising the national debt. If I can do that, then I shut down the government. And that's what we need to do.
Sorry about asking all these questions. The entitlement sector is becoming a real drain on the economy. Medicaid, welfare, and all of these other entitlement programs. Do you think if they start cutting them, we will have civil unrest?
Well, we're going to have civil unrest if we don't. I mean, the problem is no one is entitled to these programs. They think they were, but they're not. I mean, you can take a look at Social Security, right? Social Security was sold to the country as it was a scam. It was sold as an insurance program. They called the taxes premiums. They said there was going to be this trust fund. It was all a scam. It was a lie. The money was spent generations ago. There is nothing there. So now it's just this giant pyramid scheme. Again, like a Bernie Madoff, the people who are collecting their Social Security benefits today, they're not getting anything out of a fund of money they put in. That money's gone. It was spent in Vietnam. It was spent going to the moon. It was spent in, you know, in Iraq. I mean, the money's been blown. The money that we're spending now is money that we're taking from younger people. And they're going to get nothing. Nothing. They're at the end of the Ponzi scheme. What's fair about that? What's fair about saying people today who are 18, 20, 25, 30, have to pay 15% of their payroll in Social Security tax, so that older people who are much wealthier than they are, who paid much, much lower Social Security tax for that, can go play golf. I mean, this is crazy. And these Social Security taxes, if we're gonna keep the promises to, you know, the people who are in the baby boom, like me, and people who are older than me, the next couple of generations, the Social Security taxes are going to have to go up to 25%, 30% of payroll. You think they're going to stay here? Unless we build a wall around the country, they're going to leave. They're not going to put up with that kind of taxation. And so before it gets to a mass exodus, we got to do something about it. And ultimately, if we can't raise the taxes and the government just looks to the printing press to make these Social Security payments, no one's going to get anything because the money's going to be worthless. So we have to level with the American public and let them know that they were scammed. Right? Just like, you know, Bernie Madoff's customers found out that they were lied to, well, so were the people on Social Security. But what we can try to do is try to find a way to take care of the people who are so unfortunate now because of the fact that Social Security was there, that they now completely depend on it. Maybe we can find a way to take care of them. But a lot of other people are going to have to realize that, you know what, the money's not there. So they're going to have to use their private assets. And we can't keep taxing, you know, another generation to pay for the mistakes of their parents. That's not fair.
Have you gone out to eat with Nouriel Roubini?
I've met him a couple of times, yeah.
Have you gone out to eat with him, though?
I had dinner with him one night.
What kind of wine did you drink?
I don't remember. But it was at a restaurant in Greenwich, and it was me and about 20 other people. I don't remember what we had. Any other questions?
How do you feel about immigration? Now, you know a big thing about exodus from this country, but But I feel about the immigration.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, I like immigrants. I mean, my grandparents were immigrants. All four of them immigrated to this country around the turn of the last century. The difference was when they came here, there were no welfare workers. They had to work. They didn't get a quarter. There was no, they came to this country and they worked and they produced and they were assets. So the problem is not immigration. The problem is the welfare magnet that draws the wrong kind of immigrant. That's not what I want. I don't want people coming here because they want to go on the dole. I want people coming here because they want to work hard and they want to be productive. And if that's the case, then let them come in. But what we have to do is go to the root problems of our social welfare state. And don't just say, well, we need to shut our borders down, because there are real problems. And I don't want Native Americans living on these programs either. I got a problem. Just because if you're born in the country doesn't mean that somehow you're entitled to something. But that's what we have to get at. We have to stop being a magnet for people who want to get on a government program and be a magnet for people who want to work. But unfortunately, our economy is so uncompetitive that that's not the problem, unless the immigrants are working under the table. And that way they can get jobs, because the employers are individuals who are breaking the law. They're not following all the rules and there's employment there. But the minute you have to comply with all the red tape, there's no jobs there, because they're not viable anymore. Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty obvious. We all know what you feel about government, how big, how small it should be. There are more and more independents now, and there are people joining the parties, I believe. What would you bring to the Republican Party to bring about change and to grow?
Yeah, I mean, I want to make it. I mean, to be honest, over the past, many years, there's very little difference, I think, between the Republicans and Democrats, and people get frustrated. On the surface, they pretend that they're different and they quibble about things, but at the end of the day, they all want the same stuff. They want bigger government. They might argue on how we grow it, but they all want it to be bigger. And the arguments are about, well, should taxes be, 38% or 32%? No one's talking about having them, 0 or 10%. It's always just, they argue about the trivial stuff, but there's no real substantive difference. And in fact, if you look at all the Republicans are making a big deal. They're opposing some of these bills that Obama is promoting. But if Bush was promoting them, they'd all be for him, and it would be the Democrats that would be against it. It's all the same stuff. Look at all the big government bills that we passed with all the Republicans voting for it. When Bush was in the White House. So what I want to bring to the Republicans is something really different. And to show the people who are independent that if they come and vote Republican, they're actually going to vote for something different. Because when people run as Republicans and they say, yes, we want lower taxes. Well, if they don't cut spending, then it's all an illusion. If lower taxes mean nothing unless you shrink government spending. If you just give us a deficit, that means it's worse, because now we got to pay higher taxes in the future plus interest, or we're going to have to suffer inflation. I want people to realize that I'm going to go to Washington and not act like the other Republicans that are there. I'm not going to compromise my position. I mean, even if there are some, philosophically well-intentioned Republicans who have been elected, the problem is once they get into Washington and they get into that culture, they just succumb to it. They like the job, they like the title. They get down to Washington, D.C., everybody's, yes, Mr. Congressman or Mr. Senator, and they feel like they're royalty, and they like it, and they want to stay there. And they know, here's how you stay here. You cozy up to the right people, you don't make waves, you do what the leadership says, and you spend all your time raising money, and that's how you stay in Washington. And maybe they justify it, they think, well, if I don't do this, then somebody even worse than me is going to come in. But I'm not going to buy into any of that. There's nothing they can say to get me to go along with the crowd. I'm hoping I can be there for 6 years and then go back to my job. And so I'm not going to try to do all that. I said, look, dude, the country is in serious trouble, and something needs to be done about it. And maybe if I can get elected as a Republican and actually campaign and deliver on these issues, then maybe other people will do that. At one time, people thought, when Reagan ran, there's no way he could get elected. And if it wasn't for the disastrous economy brought about under Carter, and he never could have been. He never could have been elected. The country had to be in real trouble before they would turn to someone like Reagan. Now, we're going to be in much worse trouble now after Obama. So, I think I got a chance.
Would you propose a bill for term limits?
Yeah, I'd be in favor of term limits. One of the big, the argument that's made against term limits